The air that night was thin, cold, and smelled like burnt sugar mixed with static electricity. High in the desolate reaches of the Sierra Nevada, the silence was shattered by a sound that wasn't thunder and wasn't mechanical, but a screaming, tearing noise as if the fabric of the sky itself was ripping open. When the remnants of the wreckage were finally found, a slick, obsidian scar pressed into the stone face of the mountain. It wasn't the technology that terrified the few locals who dared to look. It was the creature inside. She was fragile, translucent, and bleeding a color that looked like crushed starlight. She was dying, and within 2 hours, every single person who saw her ran. They fled the contamination, the sheer, unimaginable wrongness of it all, leaving her to freeze out in the dark. Everyone abandoned her, except for the one man who had dedicated his life to an obsolete, punishing code of duty. Elias Thorne lived in a world of ghosts. His ancestors had been keepers of relics, guardians of secrets that history had long dismissed as myth, a lineage that demanded relentless loyalty even when the object of that loyalty was long dust. Elias didn't call himself a knight, but the heavy steel cross he wore beneath his collar and the rigorous, sacrificial way he lived his life defined him completely. He was the last keeper of an oath nobody remembered. He approached the crash site slowly, not with the curiosity of a scientist, but with the dread of a man expecting to witness something sacred and terrible. The wreckage was silent, toxic, shimmering with an unearthly luminescence. He found her huddled against a shard of the hull, shivering. She looked vaguely human in structure, yet profoundly alien. Her skin seemed to catch the weak moonlight and amplify it. Her eyes were immense, liquid pools of gold that betrayed panic and profound exhaustion. Elias, a man who hadn't touched another human being voluntarily in 20 years, knelt beside her. He carried a heavy first aid kit, containing items designed to treat blunt trauma or internal bleeding, earthly afflictions. They were useless here. The wound on her side pulsed with that weird purple-white light, and she made no sound. Her presence, however, was a deafening roar in Elias's mind, not of words, but of raw, crushing emotion. Asterisk terror. Loss. Pursuit. Asterisk. Elias stayed simply because his conditioning, that ancient, genetic impulse to protect the defenseless, would not allow him to leave a casualty. He wrapped her gently in a heavy thermal blanket, shielding her from the alpine cold. As her body warmed slightly, her eyes met his, and then the first plot turn hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't speech. It was a flood, a rapid-fire barrage of images slammed into his consciousness. Vast, beautiful crystalline cities dissolving into dust, black geometric shapes cutting through the void, and a feeling so potent it made his stomach clench. The desperate, heartbreaking reality of a desperate flight from total annihilation. She was an invader. She was a sole, exhausted survivor who had pushed her vehicle past the breaking point, trying to outrun a darkness he couldn't even name. She was a refugee, and now she was dying on his cold mountain. For 2 days, Elias kept vigil. He tried water, he tried medicinal teas, but nothing passed her lips. Her breathing grew shallow, and the light emanating from her wound intensified, suggesting an internal collapse. He had faced down men with guns and men with corrupted faith, but he found himself paralyzed by the silent suffering of this non-human being. His duty felt impossibly clear. Offer comfort, offer sanctuary, offer dignity. But others had noticed the debris trail. On the third morning, a trio of black, unmarked SUVs crawled up the dirt service road. Out stepped Agent Rourke, a man in a crisp suit whose professionalism felt more threatening than any raw aggression. He carried authority like a weapon, and behind him were 2 grim security officers carrying equipment that whistled and hummed. "Mr. Thorne," Rourke said, his voice flat and betraying nothing, "we appreciate your assistance in securing the site. The object is military in nature. You need to evacuate immediately." Elias stood between the approaching team and the thermal blanket where the alien woman rested. He held no weapon, only the resolve that had defined his life. "She is in my care," Elias stated, his voice gravelly and low. "She is injured and non-hostile." Rourke scoffed, gesturing to the shimmering, clearly non-terrestrial wreckage. "That thing is biological material and a containment risk. It is not a patient. Move aside, Thorn. This is the last time I'll ask nicely. This was the crux of the Templar Code, the forgotten test. It was easy to protect a holy relic behind thick stone walls. It was held to stand against overwhelming force to protect something the world had deemed disposable or dangerous. "You will not touch her," Elias said. The refusal was absolute, echoing the oaths of centuries. The ensuing confrontation was brief and brutal. Elias, though older, moved with a controlled, surprising efficiency born of lifelong training. He was a guardian, and he knew how to disable and distract. He bought time, but time was a currency running out fast, both for him and for the refugee. Rourke's men quickly gained the advantage, pinning Elias against the mountain wall. Just as the agents moved past Elias toward their target, the second, critical plot turn unfolded. The alien woman gasped, a sound like glass breaking underwater. Her gold eyes flew open, fixed solely on Elias, ignoring the approaching human threat. She raised a hand, thin and impossibly long, covered in iridescent skin, and pressed two fingers directly onto Elias's chest, over the thick, beating pump of his heart. She initiated contact again, but this time it was not a memory of annihilation. It was a focused, searing transfer of purpose. Elias felt a sudden, profound shift within his body, a cold, dense weight settling deep behind his ribs, intertwining with his very nervous system. It wasn't information or psychic residue. It felt like a biological transfer, a seed, a core, a container. She was not trying to escape death. She was trying to deliver something past her death. As the transfer ended, the incredible light within her body went out completely. The gold of her eyes faded to a dull, milky white. She went still, silent, and suddenly profoundly heavy. She was dead. Rourke and his men stopped, baffled. They had a dead body, an exotic carcass. But no struggle, no data transfer, no weapons deployed. The crucial asset was inert. Rourke ordered the collection of the body and the wreckage, treating the scene as a failure, a biological cleanup. They questioned Elias for hours, tearing his cabin apart, searching for devices or data pads. But they found nothing. Elias simply sat, his face inscrutable, offering only the truth. She came to die here, and she is now at rest. The agents left, frustrated by the lack of viable technology and the unexpected simplicity of the result. They carted away the unrecognizable body and the shattered remnants of her ship. The mountain was silent once more. Elias stood alone in the cold dawn, the only witness to her final moments. He no longer felt cold or tired. He felt the immense, cold presence deep within his chest, heavy and silent, an alien promise secured by human compassion. He realized his ancestors' oaths had finally prepared him for this single, strange duty. The Templar Code wasn't about guarding the cup of Christ or the bones of saints. It was about accepting an impossible, unknown burden for the sake of integrity. The third and final twist was the nature of the legacy she had passed on. It wasn't a weapon or a blueprint for faster-than-light travel. It was a fragment of living memory, the absolute, pure knowledge of her species' history and the trajectory of their horrifying pursuers. Elias Thorne, the lonely, archaic keeper of forgotten human vows, was now a silent vessel for an alien legacy, a living archive of a cosmic apocalypse. He began the slow, measured walk back toward his isolated cabin, carrying the knowledge of worlds he had never seen, and the certainty that his duty had not ended on that cold mountain. It had just begun. He looked at the vast, uncaring sky, no longer seeing stars, but possibilities and the black, cold geometry of their ancient enemy, which would surely follow the trail of the last refuge. He had saved her legacy. Now he had to guard it completely alone until the end of time, fulfilling an oath he had taken without ever saying a word. This was the burden of the last keeper, and the profound consequence of one simple act of pity.